The second-hand device market. What was once something of a wild west is now a considerable market force. But for the companies that have merged in this space, new challenges are arising. Constantly evolving industry dynamics have brought new channels, regulations, and manufacturer incentives, making it increasingly difficult to keep up with real-time market trends. To avoid getting left behind, you'll need a data-driven strategy that can react to developing trends and be effectively conveyed to your stakeholders. At CCS Insight, we've created a tool to help you achieve just that. Introducing Pulse, your guide through the ever-evolving second-hand market. Pulse takes real-time data from companies across the supply chain, providing you with quarterly updated market insight delivered in an easy-to-use interactive dashboard. Use these regular updates to say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven decisions. What's more is that you can keep your whole team up to speed as we provide access to Pulse for your entire organisation at no additional cost. So, if you want to stay informed and stay ahead of the competition, get in touch and book a demo now.
There's a new destination for gaming. All the gear, all the games, and it's open to every player on any network. Search EE Game Store.
organisations looking to digitise and transform the way they work, the opinions of employees are paramount. But to effectively guide decision-making, it's important to consider a wide array of contexts. Internally produced surveys contain inherent bias, confirming only what your current team would be happy with. They won't reveal the secrets to attracting top talent, nor how your competitors are using cutting-edge technologies you may not have even considered. If you want to make data-driven decisions that are easy to communicate to other stakeholders, you'll need CCS Insights Employee Workplace Technology Survey. It's designed to provide a full picture of the ever-evolving demands of the workforces and their sentiments toward new ways of working. By covering a range of regions and industries, the survey grants you access to pertinent insights that you can rely on to make informed decisions. What's more, when you work with CCS Insight, you'll receive unlimited access to our expert analysts, enabling you to get it right every time. Get in touch with the team now to learn more.
Every day, Qualcomm is transforming the way we work, live, and communicate, pushing the limits of technologies like artificial intelligence to help us stay more intelligently connected. Over the last 10 years, Qualcomm has been advancing on-device AI, recreating legendary cinematic effects from professional-grade lenses. For movie-quality images that will blow you away.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap.
Keeping up with these quickly evolving technologies can seem daunting, but that's the power of AI. You don't need to understand it. It understands you. Welcome to the edge of possible.
What does it mean to have guts? In Korean, they call it tuhan. It sort of means trying again and again and again.
It's the guts to get you hyped.
Or to turn nothing into something.
It's never giving up until you get the shot. Yeah, that's it.
It's about being you, no matter what they say.
Or cutting out all that noise and going again.
So what does it really mean to have guts? Everything.
Hi everybody, I'm Ben Wood, Chief Analyst and CMO with CCS Insight. A very warm welcome to the second day of CCS Insight's predictions for 2024 and beyond. It's great to have you join us once again. Yesterday we kicked off this year's event by exploring the new era of personalised experiences for consumers, empowered by the increasingly influential role of technology across our lives. We discussed advances in smart homes and virtual and augmented reality, and discussed trends in the digital services world with our guest Mark Alera, the CEO of EE. Today's session touches on several themes. Firstly, I'll be joined by my colleagues Bola, Rotibi, Leo Gebbie and James Sanders for a chat about artificial intelligence. In particular, we'll be considering the implications of AI adoption for consumers, as well as regulation and how we see the technology faring in the future. With AI having grabbed so much attention lately, we're going to look beyond the hype and misinformation to make sense of the opportunities and concerns AI brings, as well as sharing a couple of our predictions in that area. Then I'm delighted to say that I'll be joined by Annika Bizon, Marketing and Omnichannel Director for Samsung UK and Ireland, for a conversation about connected devices, how to engage with consumers, Samsung's ecosystem of products, and more. After that, we'll be looking at the emerging market for second-hand smartphones and sharing some eye-catching data points from our circular economy research in a section led by our Vice President of Research, Simon Bryant, along with analysts Parul Saxena and Jordan Cox. Jordan will then be joined by my colleagues Kester Mann and Luke Pearce to share insights and research and data on an emerging connectivity area, non-terrestrial networks and satellite-enabled smartphones, something that was pretty big news at Mobile World Congress earlier this year. And finally, I'll be chatting with our CEO Geoff Blaber about some of our past predictions and sharing one or two that we got right and a couple that we got wrong. As always, the whole point of making our technology predictions and putting together this event is to offer thought-provoking content to you, even if you don't necessarily agree with everything we predict. So let's get started. As promised, today's session begins with a focus on artificial intelligence. With artificial intelligence being such a hot topic, I wanted to get some of my colleagues together to have a quick discussion about what's going on in the space. Leo, great to have you here. And the big one I wanted to talk to you about is artificial intelligence in the consumer domain. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting watching this unfold, where some companies are really steering into AI, and even to the consumer market are really trying to articulate what AI is and what it looks like and what it does. And some companies are actually, I think, being far more subtle about this. They're just baking AI to things that they're already doing, this quiet background sort of process. And I mean, two very divergent approaches, but I mean, actually for a lot of consumers, they are already using AI in so many different ways in their day-to-day lives already. I mean, if you think about taking photos on your smartphone, how many elements of that are already AI assisted? You know, the camera will focus in on someone's face and edit the image for you straight away afterwards, so it looks great. Or if you're using things like Netflix, you know, the content that is being suggested to you, again, that's all driven by AI as well. So there's loads of ways that AI is already seeping into people's everyday lives. And I think actually that sort of background approach of just positioning it as something that's quietly going on is working quite nicely, I think.
Yeah, I think trying to sell AI to consumers as an individual item is going to be a really tough sell. So I think I totally agree with you. I think it's going to get woven into the experiences that people have. But of course, we've got this situation with the darker side of AI. The media love all these headlines about, you know, the doom and gloom that AI is going to bring, loss of jobs, privacy issues, all those sorts of things. And James, I know you've been thinking a lot about the more negative, I guess, and challenging implications of artificial intelligence. And we've got a couple of predictions in that area. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you, Ben. With the rise of generative AI, and we've seen huge development for it over the past year, there's a real potential that criminals are going to use this to innovate the way that they do crimes in order to evade detection. With that, when you see like text-to-speech models, you can really impersonate someone using just a small amount of training data that you can cull from social media. Use that to train the model and then impersonate them. And you know, if you gather information from traditional identity theft means, through you know, any other classical means, you can probably get away with impersonating someone and getting into their bank account. And so that's why I've got my prediction that someone's going to wind up being arrested for using AI in identity theft by 2024.
Wow. So I mean that, and I agree with you, James. I think we are going to see some real challenges, and I've seen examples of this. It's starting to get harder to know who you're actually talking to, and I think that leads us really nicely into your second prediction, which is around how society's maybe going to return a bit more to in-person kind of interactions.
Well, you know, we've already seen that with a lot of top-down sort of return to office type of you know, dictatorial type of things, but I think there's really going to be a ground-up, really organic approach to, you know, let's do things socially together again. And that brings us to the prediction of, I really think that social dynamics are going to shift to more in-person by 2030 because of a backlash to artificial intelligence.
And this is a trust thing. I mean, I think for me, this is the issue that, you know, people will want to know who they're talking to, and it's becoming harder. But Lee, I think you've got some thoughts as well.
Well, it's an interesting one because you name-check the fact that people want to return to, you know, in-person things because they know they can see their friends and they know who it is in front of them, and that's cool. But I also think online, on social media, social networks and so on, there is an element of, I think people really do value knowing that the content they're seeing is real. You know, the pictures their friends are taking and uploading are real. And we actually do have a prediction on this front that in 2024, Instagram launches an unfiltered feed, which is basically something that will let you capture and share photos all within the app. You won't be allowed to add filters, you won't be allowed to change it, and it will give people this stream of content from people they follow that they know is real. It's not affected by generative AI, it's not all filtered, and I think there is something in people wanting to have that real sense of, oh, this is real content. It's it's powerful.
So business opportunity there. Maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's someone else, but trying to deliver services that give you a bit more reassurance that it's real. Now, we're all consumers. We've talked about some consumer scenarios here, but lots of consumers work in business, in the enterprise as well. Bola, that's where your team sits. You do a lot of research on this. And I wonder if you could just give us a little sneak peek into how you're seeing AI changing the business world.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. And AI, as we've talked about, is very prevalent and really are making a sort of impactful influence to the way that people work. One of the things that we're seeing, especially with generative AI, that we've talked about, is how, you know, it's helping people to be much more efficient and more productive. That's really the bottom line. And what it's doing that is actually sort of summarising meeting notes, for example, or kind of linking to, you know, sort of other documents that, you know, in a collaborative way, sort of second guessing almost the way that you work. So that's one of the things, and there's many tools that we see that. Microsoft Copilot, we've seen Google with Duet AI in their workspace, and in fact, in some places, in some examples, it's actually, you don't even have to turn up to a meeting. It will summarise the meeting as if you were there. So we know we could all love that. But the other side of it is that from the technical aspect, from a lot of development and technical people in the IT organisation, they're using it to help generate code, which is really, really great because it allows them to focus, you know, to not worry about the hard, heavy lifting, but focus on the things to smooth it out. And so that's one of the reasons why we're going to start seeing much more AI-generated sort of solutions. And one of the reasons why we've got a prediction which says hopefully by 2026, there will be an AI-generated sort of program that actually generates £10 million worth of revenue and spearheads the market for other types of AI-generated solutions. So that's kind of what's coming.
That sounds bold. So you're effectively saying that AI on its own will develop new lines of revenue and it'll be able to go off and do it on its own. Businesses will exploit that capability. Of course, we know there are all these concerns about the impact on employment. I think we have seen some of these disruptions in the past, and typically there is some pain, but new opportunities emerge.
Yes.
But now, the other topic we're all very aware of, a lot in the media at the moment as well, is regulation. AI has become a lightning conductor for regulation, and Bola, I know you've been looking at it closely. We've got a couple of predictions in this area. So maybe you could just quickly run us through those two predictions you've got.
Yeah, the two big predictions that we have is that the EU will, it's been drawing up its AI acts, but actually it will still take time before they actually come to fruition, partly because AI is really happening very fast, it's evolving very fast, and so we don't see anything really coming to fruition until 2024. The other side is the US is also going to be a bit slow on addressing this, partly because also in 2024 they will fail to kind of really address the big tech guys because we've got an election coming on, and that is going to take a lot of focus. But the big winners is likely to be the EU. I know the UK, we're in the UK, we're good at regulation, and that's what the government is hoping that we'll be really good at. But the EU has got the frameworks in place, and we've already seen what they've done with GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and what they're doing with the AI Act, and also what's just come into place, the Digital Markets Act. I think that has real strength. So I think while everyone else is kind of focused elsewhere, the EU has the framework in place.
I couldn't agree more. I think GDPR is the reference point for this, where the EU, against a lot of resistance, mandated that, and it went on to really be the template for legislation around the world. But here we are, super peak time for AI. It's everywhere. We're all talking about it. I see it in all the headlines. I see it in the media. And I think that we might be getting to a point in the kind of hype cycle of technology that AI is probably getting to a point where it's peaking out. But Leo, I know you've got a prediction in this area you can share for us.
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it? I mean, AI it's been everywhere. Everyone's had the explosion of excitement with chatbots and image generation and a lot of excitement about that, but there's increasing complexity with that. There's the base economics of it as well, where these generative AI prompts are far more expensive to do than a typical search query would have been in the past. And ultimately, this is becoming more and more problematic. We're seeing increasing focus on trying to shift to different models for generative AI, where elements of it are hosted on device and there's hybrid approaches taken. And I think all these challenges are actually adding up to a position where we predict that in 2024, generative AI is actually going to take a bit of a cold shower because of these complexities, challenges, and issues that are really to be resolved.
I couldn't agree more. I think the hype is immense at the moment. I think we've touched on lots of reasons why this is going to be a great technology, but at the same time as well, we've run out of time for this section. So I'm going to have to draw it to a close. I know, Bola, you're probably going to be talking more about AI tomorrow in your session. But now it's time for me to hand over to Simon, Bryant, and the rest of the team who are going to share some insights on our new circular economy research.
Hello, my name is Simon Bryant. I lead the research division at CCS Insight. One of our core research areas is the circular economy, an integral component of our broader focus on sustainability. This covers a range of sectors we track, including devices, infrastructure, telecom operators, and enterprise. Our latest research highlights a pivotal moment in the evolution of the circular economy. We're witnessing a transition from a fragmented landscape dominated by small businesses and unregulated peer-to-peer transactions to a structured ecosystem founded on trust and value for end users. Major telecom companies are increasingly aligning with this shift, driven by internal sustainability targets and the realization that the circular economy presents a transformative approach to revenue streams, from a traditional manufacturing model to a service model. The circular economy rests on three pillars: reuse, recycle, and repair, each evolving at distinct rates. Global revenues for these three sectors in 2022 fell between $90 and $100 billion. These figures might seem minuscule compared to the traditional mobile market, but they represent a new class of service-level revenues that are chipping away at conventional business models, primarily because they promote reduced consumption of new devices. More significantly, we project that the circular economy is poised to surpass traditional phone industry growth within the next decade. But this isn't just about the impact on sales of devices, it's also about the ripple effects of secondary markets on competition and wider ecosystems. To that end, we predict that by the end of 2023, more than half of iPhones in use are second-hand devices. This highlights the growing relevance of secondary markets, especially within the iOS ecosystem and its associated services. But let's not forget, economic shifts are just one side of the coin. The imperative for circularity also arises from environmental concerns. Each year, we discard nearly 2 billion devices and accessories. This escalating consumption has significant repercussions for CO2 emissions and contributes to the increasing amounts of raw materials being buried in landfills every year. Therefore, forging commercial models that inherently champion sustainability has become a pressing priority, resonating across all facets of the telecom industry, from network infrastructure to consumer devices and services. Now let's turn our focus to a critical pillar of the circular economy, reuse, also known as the second-hand device market or the secondary market. This sector deals with trade-ins, refurbishments, and the resale of used devices and is experiencing a surge, largely because organised channels, major retailers, phone makers, mobile operators, and online marketplaces are all participating, offering a range of services from trade-ins and refurbishments and direct sales. Our projections for 2023 indicate a 5% growth in the secondary market, reaching 450 million units sold. In contrast, the primary market for mobile devices is expected to decline by 5%, hitting 1.4 billion units. Over the next 5 to 10 years, CCS Insight forecasts that the secondary market will outperform the primary market, as both consumers and enterprises prioritize cost-effectiveness and sustainability over new devices, especially as technological advancements in mobile devices plateau. This industry aims to advance circularity through 4 key strategies. Firstly, acquisition. Sourcing devices in large volumes is a focal point for operators, retailers, and insurance providers. These devices are typically acquired through insurance claims, 14-day return policies, and most substantially, trade-in and upgrade programs. It's worth noting that North America and Japan are the primary drivers of global take-back inventories, and other regions are exploring ways to catch up. Secondly, device as a service. One way to bridge the gap between demand and supply, particularly in regions like Europe where consumption outpaces trade-in activity, is through device as a service model, including rentals. In such models, companies retain ownership of devices and manage their life cycle, making it easier to recover devices when users upgrade. The third major strategy is automation and upscaling. The secondary market has transitioned from labour-intensive processes to scalable, automated workflows. This automation enhances functionality and design, extending the device's life cycle. We forecast that automation will represent more than 20% of the secondary market's output by the end of 2024. And finally, redistribution. The resale of used devices varies widely based on market maturity. For instance, Western Europe, the US, and parts of Asia prefer 3rd and 4th generational devices, whereas Eastern Europe, Africa, and other parts of Asia look for 4th and 6th generation devices. Looking ahead, we predict the adoption of a date of birth indicator on consumer electronics by 2024 as the second-hand market grows. Additionally, the industry faces the challenge of standardizing device grading. To this end, CCS Insight predicts the development of a universal grading system in the coming years, bolstering consumer and enterprise confidence. Here to talk about the second pillar of the circular economy is my colleague Jordan Cox.
Turning our attention to the recycle facet of the circular economy, it's clear that the industry has a long road ahead. As it stands, less than 1% of materials from old devices are currently reclaimed for reuse, while some premium devices that don't make it to the second-hand market are recycled. The actual percentage of recycled materials is minuscule. That said, our research suggests a positive trend. Companies are beginning to engage more proactively with recycling initiatives. This move toward recycling isn't just altruistic. It's increasingly viewed as a commercial imperative, fueled by both consumer demand for sustainable practices and regulatory pressures. Consider this. The United Nations estimates that a staggering 7% of all mined gold is sitting in e-waste. To put that into perspective, 1 tonne of e-waste contains up to 100 times more gold than 1 tonne of gold ore. Precious metals are notably abundant in components like printed circuit boards, making them a largely untapped resource. Manufacturers are waking up to this potential. Phone makers are increasingly incorporating recycled materials and components into their products. And looking forward, CCS Insight predicts a landmark development. By 2030, we expect to see the introduction of the first smartphones equipped with biodegradable batteries. These batteries can be broken down by living organisms, making them more environmentally friendly and easier to recycle and dispose of. And so, we've covered developments in device reuse and recycling that will be critical to the circular economy. That leaves us with the third pillar of the industry, which Parul is going to explore next.
Thanks, Jordan. Let's now delve into critical yet often overlooked dimension of repair in the circular economy. At its core, the concept of repair serves as a linchpin for reducing electronic waste, prolonging the lifespan of devices, and making sustainability affordable and achievable for all. Recently, we have witnessed a huge shift in public perception about the role of repairs, fueled by a convergence of environmental, economic, and societal drivers. This transformation heralds a new era where repairs aren't merely an afterthought, but a foundational aspect of responsible consumption. Let's consider some emerging repair initiatives. The right to repair movement, for example, is gaining unprecedented momentum. Its focus has expanded beyond just advocating for consumer rights to facilitating access to spare parts, user-friendly repair manuals, and software updates for longer life cycles. Another transformative approach is the rise of device-as-a-service models, as Simon has already touched on, where companies offer in-contract repairs as part of rental or subscription programs. This initiative effectively relieves consumers from financial burdens and stress from dealing with device damage like cracked screen or water damage. In these rental or lease models, the motivation for companies to produce durable, repairable devices is stronger, as the burden of repairs often falls on them. Now, imagine a scenario where your smartphone or smart home appliance not only performs its primary function, but also autonomously monitors its health, identifying issues before they become full-blown problems. There are early efforts to start using AI on domestic appliances, for example, smart fridges using AI to save power, and washing machine detecting a drum clean when needed. Thanks to cutting-edge advances in artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, self-repairing features are more feasible than ever. It's very early days, but the journey has begun. To that end, we predict that AI-powered repair diagnostics will become a standard feature on some consumer devices by 2027. However, it is crucial to acknowledge certain challenges like data privacy, technological complexity, and standardization. In conclusion, as the world leans more towards sustainable practices, the concept of repair promises to play an increasingly pivotal role, especially when reinforced by advanced technologies like AI. Up next, Wenwood is talking to Annika Bizon, Marketing and Omnichannel Director for Samsung UK and Ireland, about connected devices and new ways to engage with consumers.
The second-hand device market. What was once something of a wild west is now a considerable market force. But for the companies that have merged in this space, new challenges are arising. Constantly evolving industry dynamics have brought new channels, regulations, and manufacturer incentives, making it increasingly difficult to keep up with real-time market trends. To avoid getting left behind, you'll need a data-driven strategy that can react to developing trends and be effectively conveyed to your stakeholders. At CCS Insight, we've created a tool to help you achieve just that. Introducing Pulse, your guide through the ever-evolving second-hand market. Pulse takes real-time data from companies across the supply chain, providing you with quarterly updated market insight delivered in an easy-to-use interactive dashboard. Use these regular updates to say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven decisions. What's more is that you can keep your whole team up to speed as we provide access to Pulse for your entire organisation at no additional cost. So, if you want to stay informed and stay ahead of the competition, get in touch and book a demo now.
I'm delighted to be here at Samsung's Smart Things Home Showcase with Annika Bizon, Marketing and Omnichannel Director for Samsung UK and Ireland. Thank you so much for joining me, Annika. What a wonderful place to sit down and have a chat.
Welcome.
Thank you. Let's start with devices. I think this is the most interesting area. Foldables are really hot. Can you just share a few insights on how this category is helping you kind of engage with customers and maybe even differentiate yourselves in the premium tier?
I think to start with, it's all about getting people to join the flip side, come with us on this journey, and we've seen foldables increase by 60% globally year on year in terms of intention to purchase. So we're on really, really solid foundations. I take from that also, we've just launched our Galaxy Z Fold 5 and our Galaxy Z Flip 5, and we took that back to Korea for the launch. I think you were there.
I was, it was fantastic, really great trip.
And the exciting thing for us is it was about, this is a big seminal moment for us to really relaunch what we see as our cutting edge technology. We're seeing a seismic shift in people's intention to purchase these products. And in the UK specifically, the launch of these, we saw that within the first 10 days, we had 30% more pre-orders than we had in the entire launch for the previous foldables launch. So it's exciting because we're on this journey and we're starting to see, we're changing form factor. And when you change form factor, it's going to take time. The other thing we learned with this is that, people have a baseline expectation of what they want. They want a phone that has great processing power, has a great camera, but it's almost the identifiers that sit above that we've really leaned into. And what that is it's a personal expression of how you live your life, how you want to live your life. Whether that be, I want to take the best selfie, whether that be through the flip, or whether that be productivity on the go, or I want to watch content or game on my fold. All of these things have been built into the campaign and the thoughts around how we've taken this to market, supported with our operator and retail partners. And then the final thing I'd say is, that's really helped with our awareness and consideration. So consideration for us is people's intention to think about changing form factor. That's up 3 points in the UK. That's 2 million more people that are thinking about moving into this new sort of phase that we're bringing to the market. And then the final thing I would say is, 7 out of 10 people know what a foldables phone is.
The awareness is astonishing. Intention to purchase is tougher, but it sounds like that's going in the right direction. But what about retailing these devices? I mean, they're lovely, they're these shiny things, but sometimes people are a bit scared of touching them or whatever. I know you and your team have been working hard in that area. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
And if I take a step backwards, we launched these phones in the middle of a pandemic in terms of making them large scale. And the one thing that came from that and really sat with all of our research and our insight is that consumers, 2/3 of consumers want to touch a product before they buy it. And when you think about that in a pandemic world, it's like, how do you get people to touch a new form factor? So we put that right in the center of our campaign. And our campaign was really around how many people can we get to spend some time with the phone in their hand and experience what it can do for them, because it's different for everybody. So we launched something called the 500k selfie campaign. And that was across all of our retail stores. And the idea behind that was it was backed with PR, media, and the thinking for us was, how do we get as many people to be incentivized and engaged with the fact that if you go and take a selfie, you spend some time with the device and you can spend some time learning about the device. It doesn't matter whether you want the selfie at the end of it. What it matters is you can go into any of our retail stores and have the same experience. And what we've seen from that is our interactions were up over 10%, 1.5% more than last year. because people wanted to touch and feel the experience. We coupled that with interactive buses that went across the country. We know that people, again, want to touch our product, but we've got to go to them. Sometimes, we think everyone comes to us. So we went to student unions, university campuses, we went to shopping centres, and again, we tailored our messaging around come and experience the products. And we took that even one stage further when we went to universities, where it's like we were showing tablet, we were showing our Galaxy book range, just because we wanted people to see it in their own environment and play with the devices in their own environments. And that has been one of our critical success factors of how we've got to the point where we've made this more mass.
So it sounds like obviously there's the engagement there. I think what we've seen is people like the devices because they're different.
Yeah.
And that's quite
It's
nice.
an identifier.
It is. I know it says something about you as an individual.
Yeah.
Phones are so intrinsic to our lives now. But obviously extending the reach into new demographics, driving into new parts of the market. Sounds like you're targeting younger people with some of the activations you're doing. Can you talk about any other things you're doing, maybe with partners, to drive engagement as well?
Oh, do you know what? This is probably the most exciting part for me at the moment, because I think if you took a step backwards in marketing, you'd go, it's all about telemarketing. And now it's not. It's about engagement. It's about really understanding the audience you're going after and talking to them and letting them talk to you in their own language. And so some of the partnerships we've looked at, and we've just recently launched one with Skateboard Gebbie, which is a really exciting space for us. And the reason this came about, and I'm just going to give you a bit of context to how we got to this partnership, was actually from a learning that somebody said skateboarders generally use a trainer to prop up their phone so they can get the perfect shot. Because we know with skateboarding, you've got to keep trying, you've got to keep getting that shot, because you can understand what you're doing wrong then. And it was that moment where we all sort of sat around a table and went, hang on a second, we've got a foldable phone, a phone that stands up on its own. There's a genuine user case for this. So that was the start of this really exciting partnership with Skateboard Gebbie. We know we're going into the Olympics. It was like, actually, almost the stars aligned. One is Samsung's Spirit Tuchon, which is all about basically really gritty spirit, keep trying, keep working at it, which skateboarding is really relevant. The second thing was Skateboard Gebbie. They're doing some amazing work with grassroots skateboarding, going into schools, how we redevelop skate parks. So this is a long-term partnership that I'm incredibly proud and very excited to work on. Coupled with, we've got Sky Brown, and Sky Brown is now announced as our ambassador. So she's going to be working really closely to make sure we stay authentic and make sure we stay authentic with this community. So that's the first partnership, dead excited about. The second one I'd like to talk about is Disney+. So Disney+ we've worked with for now 18 months. And this is kind of the final part of our exciting journey with this particular S-Series. So S-Series, what we're going to be doing is we've launched an entire campaign around Loki. Loki is in its second season. And the idea is a bespoke Marvel advert that's been made by the Marvel team with our products integrated. And this is, you'll see it in market, it's incredibly exciting. We know that the Android audience over-index for us. So talking to them in their language it's really, really cool. So that's happening. And then finally, I can go on forever. I'm sure you don't want me to. But we're working with Fortnite. Fortnite, we did an in-game activation for our products, which was basically actually having players play in the fold. And the engagement interactions, we had 20 minutes play on our products now. I don't think there's many brands that can say someone's sitting in their ecosystem for 20 minutes playing with their products. So it's exciting times, and we're going to be doing more of it. 100%.
So let's change gear. We're sitting in this magnificent showcase here, a multitude of connected devices.
Yep.
One of the things I've noticed looking at Samsung is this desire to have this ecosystem of products, bringing together your products, your partners' products, giving a more total solution. I know that's something you've been thinking about as a business. How's that helping with engagement with consumers and giving you some different touch points and other opportunities?
So we start off with the fact that 18 months ago we rebranded the business device experience, DX division. And that's because we can see the huge opportunity in technology for good. And what I mean by that is technology in your home that makes your life easier, in your life that, whether that be your phone connecting to your earbuds, whether that be your fridge connecting to your phone so you can look inside and see what foods you've got you need to buy. All of these things are designed to work together and in an open network. So it's not just Samsung's products. You can attach a Ring doorbell or whatever you want to attach to it. But we see this as a really big opportunity to reach into the consumer and talk to them about how it makes their lives easier. How smart homes aren't a new thing, but the way that they're used can be.
They've been hard. I mean, that's the thing. It is actually lowering that barrier and making it easier. I think we see it here. You know, it's all working really well, but that's kind of an optimal situation.
100%.
So education is a big thing.
I think education, you know, we've seen voice become a really big part of every home, and people don't necessarily think of that as being part of your smart home, but voice is a big part of the smart home. And even down to, you know, you build new behaviours through connected devices. You know, personally, I'm obsessed with sleep tracking. It used to be steps, now I'm sleep tracking and how little sleep I get. But that's a new behaviour that's been built out through connected devices, and our products are designed to do that, and we need to show the consumer the simplest ways you can do that.
That's good, yeah. I mean, sleep is now one of the new big health pivots, and I think, you know, I'm like you, the more you research into it, it's super
scary.
Important. I need more. Well, I'd be remiss not to end our conversation today, and it's something we like to ask people we interview, which is whether you have any predictions that you'd like to share with us in terms of, and it doesn't have to be Samsung specific, it can be any topic you like, on how you see things evolving in the next year or several years going forward.
I think the thing that's top of my mind right now, I'm a marketeer, is AI within marketing. And what I mean by that, because AI is I'm going to demystify this, AI is a word, right? But two words. But the reality of it is what does that mean in terms of asset creation? What does that mean in terms of how we can go to our consumer and adapt our content creative to be more relevant for them? I'm already seeing some data points that are saying that actually AI can, or through the use of AI, you can actually change assets with it, you know, use your standard KV, but adapt it to the consumer.
Right.
And the uplifts around that and the propensity around that are really interesting. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And I feel that that may be something that we'll be talking about as a standard format in the next 12 months.
Fantastic. Well, maybe it's something we can revisit next year, but I mean, AI certainly is a huge part of the predictions event as well. Annika, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to get your insights. Good luck with the skateboarding.
Thank you.
And talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
What does it mean to have guts? In Korean, they call it tuhan. It sort of means trying again and again and again.
It's the guts to get you hyped.
Or to turn nothing into something.
It's never giving up until you get the shot. Yeah, that's it.
It's about being you, no matter what they say.
Or cutting out all that noise and going again.
So what does it really mean to have guts? Everything.
Hello, I'm Jordan Cox, an analyst in the Network Infrastructure division here at CCS Insight. Today I will be talking about the emerging satellite non-terrestrial network industry and the state of play in the market. Satellites are gaining prominence in cellular communications, but the full extent of their potential to complement terrestrial networks and technologies such as phone services and consumer or business broadband remains very much unclear. There's also the fact that satellite service plans do tend to be more expensive because of the additional costs of purchasing expensive equipment and terminals. Currently, satellites serve many uses across numerous industries, from telecommunications to navigation and environmental monitoring. To better understand the breadth of satellite-based applications, CCS Insight, alongside our exclusive research partnership with the Global Mobile Suppliers Association, or the GSA, has categorised uses into 4 areas. Firstly, we have traditional satellite-based voice and data services. These can be provided using satellite phones or other handheld devices, which transmit signals directly to orbiting satellites. The same satellites then relay the signal back to Earth, where it's routed through the traditional telecom network to reach the recipient of the call. Another category is rural and enterprise broadband. These are telecom services that provide access to high-speed internet using satellites and are particularly useful in rural or remote areas where terrestrial broadband infrastructure is limited or completely unavailable. Traditionally, satellite broadband services have had higher latency and data usage limitations than terrestrial networks, but with greater technological advancements, satellite providers can now offer faster speeds and larger data allowances, creating a viable alternative to traditional broadband options. And when we look at the number of partnerships between mobile network operators and satellite providers, it's clear that rural and enterprise broadband is quickly gaining prominence. According to GSA data, to the end of July 2023, 41 partnerships had already formed globally, like KDDI and Starlink in Japan, and Telecom and Pacific in Papua New Guinea, all specifically offering rural broadband services. The third category for satellite applications is IoT and machine-to-machine services, which enable devices to communicate with each other through satellite networks. These are particularly relevant in industries like transportation, energy, and agriculture, where assets such as vehicles and machinery are spread across large, very remote locations and need continuous monitoring and control. Lastly, direct-to-cell phone services. This is a relatively new technology that provides a direct connection between a constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit and an unmodified mobile phone, using operators' existing terrestrial spectrum and equipment. Initially, uses will only involve emergency SOS and low data rate two-way messaging, but this could eventually grow to broadband services once low Earth orbit constellations are fully developed. From a user's perspective, this means that smartphones will now be able to connect directly to satellites in locations where it would have previously been impossible. And although it's seen as the newcomer to the industry, the growth of direct-to-cell phone services is quickly developing. And as of July 2023, the GSA had identified 22 partnerships planning to offer the service, including the likes of 2 Degrees in New Zealand, with Link, STC partnering with AST Space Mobile in Saudi Arabia, as well as the popularised SpaceX and T-Mobile deal in the United States. Most of these services are set to launch from 2024 and beyond. Now, I'll hand over to Kester, who will be diving a bit more into the opportunities, challenges, and expectations for the satellite industry.
Thanks, Jordan, and hi everyone. Let me briefly update you on how telecom operators are embracing opportunities from satellite. Firstly, based on the data Jordan just shared, sourced from the GSA, there had already been more than 70 publicly announced partnerships with satellite providers at the end of July 2023. This goes far beyond the prediction we made 2 years ago, as the renaissance of satellite broadband was just beginning, that at least 20 deals would be struck by the end of 2023. The faster than expected momentum reflects growing enthusiasm to identify complementary and cost-effective alternatives to terrestrial networks, particularly for deployments in sparsely populated locations or in places where the terrain is difficult or for specific use cases. Excitingly, we're also starting to see some tentative real-world deployments. Through partnerships with operators, Link is offering satellite-to-phone services in both the Cook Islands and Palau. In these Pacific archipelagos, the technology can be used to connect remote communities and to provide backup in the event of natural disasters. In the UK, meanwhile, BT and OneWeb have brought internet connectivity for the first time to the 28 permanent residents of Lundy Island, located about 20 kilometres off the coast of southwest England. The partnership is enabling applications such as payment systems and powering local conservation efforts. I was interested to hear too about a recent tie-up between Telefonica and Seteliot, touting narrowband IoT services everywhere on the planet, starting next year. It sounds like a bold claim and only one that a satellite provider could empower, given its ability to quickly cover very wide geographies. It also goes a long way to validating a prediction we made in 2022, that a telecom provider would claim to offer global coverage, achieved largely through a satellite partnership. But recent announcements should also be put into perspective. The flood of trials and alliances shouldn't disguise that satellite is still a long-term opportunity and one saddled with risk. The spectacular failures of some previous ventures should offer a stark warning to today's hopefuls. High cost is the most obvious barrier. Even Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, once famously joked that one of its primary objectives is simply to avoid going bankrupt. Performance-wise, the technology is still largely unproven, and if there's an expectation that it will match existing terrestrial networks for speed and reliability, today's hype could quickly turn to disillusionment. There are also mounting concerns about regulation, space debris and impact on the environment. Nevertheless, operators are right to sense an exciting opportunity to extend coverage into the hardest to reach locations to help narrow the digital divide. There'll be no let up in noise in this area during the months ahead. Luke will now address some of the broader developments in this space.
Thanks, Kester. It's important to note that satellite is not just about mobile operators. Satellite connectivity, or new radio non-terrestrial networks as it's referred to in the 3GPP standards, is an integral part of the broader narrative of 5G Advanced and even 6G, promising unification with the networks and infrastructure, but also the devices we use to stay connected. In recent years, the costs of buying a dedicated satellite phone have limited its usefulness to just a few types of customer, like extreme adventurers, government, military or humanitarian workers. However, with the smartphone market in decline and struggling to find innovative features and the growing demand to always stay connected, we've seen some exciting new partnerships form with these existing satellite constellations. At the end of 2022, Apple partnered with US satellite company Globalstar to launch its new iPhone 14 range with emergency SOS functionality, enabling users to access satellite connectivity whenever they might desperately need it in a life-threatening or medical emergency, all through a smartphone for the first time. Offered free for 2 years, it aligns with Apple's positioning of having your back, be that for security, privacy, health, or now as an emergency contact. Apple's investment into Globalstar is significant, and we think Apple will continue to see satellite as a core part of its service offering. As a result, we predict that within 2 years, Apple's collaborative venture with Globalstar will enable Apple to make iMessage a satellite-based global service, meaning that Apple device users can connect anywhere, anytime, independent of coverage, accessible through an Apple One subscription and amplifying the attractiveness of this service. Apple was one of the first, but not the only company to announce satellite compatibility. This year, we have seen further announcements for Android devices, including Qualcomm and Iridium's upcoming Snapdragon satellite program, MediaTek's new solution with UK ruggedized device maker Bullet, and Huawei with China's Baidu constellation. These Android solutions have leapfrogged the iPhone to already support two-way text messaging via satellite, enable you to communicate wherever you are. Although only premium devices will be supported initially, we believe this will whittle down into the mid-tier and low-end phones as costs fall, leading us to predict that as many as 15% of smartphone users will have satellite-enabled devices by 2027. These new devices, along with the new low Earth orbit constellations that are being launched, and the overarching development of 3GPP standards for non-terrestrial networks, means that satellite will increasingly be embedded in our everyday communication, and even stretching beyond that to enrich unconnected populations and communities. Having no signal will be something of the past. We cover all this in CCS Insight's recently launched Spotlight report about opportunities in the market for satellite to mobile connectivity, and this is an area we'll be publishing more material on as it develops over the next few months. Stay tuned to our social channels for further updates. But for now, let's take a look at some of our most interesting predictions from recent years and whether or not they came true.
To wrap up day 2, we're going to do something we've wanted to do for a long time, which was to revisit some of the predictions we've done in the past, whether we got them right, wrong, partially right, or they haven't happened yet. And we've been reviewing the stack of prediction booklets we've got in the office, and I'm joined by Geoff to talk about this. It's going to be a quick fire review of some of the predictions we've picked out. So I'm going to start with regulation. That's been a hot topic for you, and if you cast your mind back to October 2020, we predicted that basically outside Europe there wouldn't be much change to regulation all the way through to 2023, and that's now. So how did that one turn out?
I mean, this was one we got spot on. And the key point here is outside of Europe, because what we said was that the EU would basically provide the blueprint for regulation of big tech. Whilst there was an appetite for a growing appetite for the regulation of big tech in the US, the reality of actually delivering that was very, very difficult because there was no agreement across parties as to how that should happen. And second to that, you started to have this big theme around the US versus China and restrictions coming in, and that started to balloon. And a big concern, of course, was that you over-regulate big tech and it basically puts China in the driving seat. You also had the pandemic, And of course, and we'll talk about this, the pandemic was, it basically increased the reliance on big tech to get us out of that, to grow the economy out of the pandemic. So all of that resulted in a situation we have now where basically you've got the EU and the Digital Markets Act is the blueprint for the regulation of big tech. This, of course, throws up some big questions, which we'll talk about later in predictions around what that means for AI, because it's very hard to see how the US will be in the driving seat when it comes to AI. And I think it's very likely we'll see history repeating itself with the EU very much at the forefront of AI regulation.
So let's take a gear change. Talked about regulation. Macroeconomic climate was a big concern, still is. And back in 2020, we were deep in pandemic situation. Yeah. And we predicted that big tech and technology companies would recover faster from the recession that was looming after that period of time. And they would come out of the pandemic and accelerate faster than the bigger, wider economy. Again, I think that's one that we did well on, but there's a bit of a twist to it, a bit of a sting in the tail.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what happened, wasn't it? It was tech which really drove innovation, drove investment, and spearheaded the broader global economic recovery. And as Satya Nadella himself said, CEO of Microsoft, you basically had 2 years of digitization that took place in 2 months. So you had all this demand pulled in. And obviously that was a huge spur in terms of growth for the technology industry. The flip side, which you pointed to there, is that you had all that demand pulled in early, and then you have the kind of hangover afterwards, which is what we've experienced in the last year, basically, if not 18 months. The flip side to that, and the green shoots, if you like, is that we have started to see the signs of recovery recently from the hyperscalers. You can see it in the earnings. They've obviously trimmed a lot of the fat that they put on during and particularly just after COVID. And so hopefully we're starting to see that turnaround, despite the fact that other areas of the technology industry, particularly smartphones, as we've discussed, are having a challenging time. So perhaps I can turn to you, Ben. Devices are very much near and dear to your heart, and we've been looking at supply chain over the years, but if we take ourselves back to October 2020, we had a prediction then that supply chains for many technology products would continue to rely on China until 2024. So where are we?
Well, I think you have to look at this prediction through the optics of what we saw at that time. The US administration had put pretty draconian limits on companies like Huawei, adding them to the entity list. It was looking pretty difficult to do business with China, and the spotlight started to turn on companies that were very dependent on China for their supply. And the big one there, of course, is Apple, but there's many others as well. And people were talking about the fact that they needed to diversify their reliance. Easy, throwaway comments, pick up the factory, put it into another country. The reality is that's really, really tough to do. There are layers and layers and layers of the supply chain that feed that machine that makes all of those products. You need huge numbers of people, whole cities of people making devices, and it's just not realistic to just do a wholesale move in a short amount of time. We're starting to see some diversification in terms of supply, and Europe and the US are trying to invest to encourage people to do that, but our prediction stands true. Right now, companies like Apple are still extremely dependent on China for supply.
Yeah, scale's a big advantage, but that makes diversification all the harder.
Absolutely.
So staying on that devices theme then, and the theme of green and sustainability has been big over the last 2 years. Certainly at predictions this year is something we're focused on. But if we think all the way back to October 2021, that certainly wasn't the case. It wasn't as high up the considerations set for device manufacturers. Back then, we had a prediction that by 2024, phone makers' green credentials actually become an important part of consumers' purchase decisions. So where are we, do you think?
Well, this is a curious one because with the benefit of hindsight, this one looks pretty obvious. We've seen all the manufacturers pushing recycled materials, take-back programs, all these kind of things. And so this has absolutely happened. And since we made that prediction, we started our connected consumer radar research, which means that we've got tons of data in advanced markets from consumers. And we see stats like over 50% of consumers we're talking to have said that they will consider a more sustainable product, and even say that they'd be prepared to pay a little bit more for it. Now, we need to put that in the context of a lot of the consumers we talk to also say that they will look at things like second-hand devices, primarily for cost reasons, but sustainability's playing a role there. But we've got tons of data that really is supporting that prediction. And I think that, that one, again, looked tricky at the time, that has definitely come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely trending in the right direction. So a final one on the hardware side of things then. So we had a huge amount of attention last year around one prediction in particular, and it's always an Apple prediction that gets that attention. And that was that Apple would launch a foldable iPad in 2024. So where are we? Is it going to happen?
Well, thinking about last year's event and the time to now, the single question I've probably been asked the most is, when are we going to see a folding iPhone? We've just seen Apple launch another new iPhone, very similar to what they did before. No sign of a folding iPhone. And we stand by our prediction that I don't think Apple's going to have a folding iPhone anytime soon. In fact, why would they do it? It merely legitimizes the efforts that Samsung and others are trying to make to have a differentiated product. Furthermore, hugely risky when the iPhone franchise is alive and well and the services business is throwing off cash. But we're sticking with this prediction. Who knows, but maybe in 2024 we will see a folding iPad. And what a great opportunity to put a shot in the arm for the tablet category. Huge hype, huge excitement from Apple. This would be a big one if it came true.
Yeah.
But definitely no folding iPhone anytime soon, but maybe a folding iPad.
Very good.
So thinking about ones, let's think about ones that didn't land, because it's quite fun doing the ones that we got right. But let's do one that didn't land. And one we talked about, I was looking back and I saw that we predicted that by 2023, this year, Apple would launch a social network. What happened there?
You like to pick the hard ones, don't you? So I think, let's not forget, back in 2010, that Apple already had a stab at this, that they had Ping, which was a social network for iTunes, and it lasted 2 years. In reality, I'd use the expression that you used just now. Apple don't need to take the risk. They've got the secret sauce of very tightly integrated hardware, software, services, and content. They simply didn't need to launch a social network. I think add to that, since we made that prediction, you've seen a huge focus on privacy from Apple. It's basically become a key feature, and we had a prediction around that as well, which came to fruition some years ago now. Privacy alongside a social network would really jar, and particularly when you think about how Apple has positioned itself relative to Meta. So they didn't need it. So it's one that we categorically got wrong, and certainly we reflect back and we think we need to understand why.
Okay, and I guess our final prediction, which probably falls to me, is that by 2020 a European operator would buy a company that repairs and kind of sells second-hand phones. And that was a long time ago. 2018 we predicted that, and we said it would come home in 2020. It didn't. Yeah. So I think I'll just reflect on that one for a moment, which is we had a situation where we didn't really have a lot of interest in second-hand devices at that stage, and we got it too early. But now what's actually happening is that we are seeing that the second-hand market is driving a huge amount of growth. 14% year on year last year, when the mainstream new phone sales struggled to get low single-digit growth. Yeah. And I think when you see companies like Orange, who in France have committed that they will sell 10% of the devices that go to customers that are second-hand or refurbished, that's a clear signal that they might want to take more control of the supply chain. So rather than relying on third-party companies, they will move to have that in-house. They'll manage the take-back through trade-in programs, and they'll spin those products out to other customers.
Yes.
But we're out of time. I'm sorry, Geoff. It's been a great pleasure talking to you about this. And all it leaves is for me to say thank you so much for joining us for day 2 of predictions. We've got loads more coming tomorrow. We'll be looking at private mobile networks, convergent, other network capabilities, more on AI for enterprise customers, and you'll see some of the details of the agenda coming up shortly. So thanks for joining us. Please do share your thoughts with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you and love to get your views. See you tomorrow.